My name is Joyce Dorado. I'm the co-founder and director of UCSF Healthy Environments and Response to Trauma in Schools. The metaphor we use is a record player, old-time vinyl records, and you know what we used to do in the olden days is you put a needle on the record and you play a song, and the needle's going around on the record, and if you play a song, 15,000 times because you're 14 years old and you love, Stairway to Heaven, what happens is it actually starts to wear a groove in the record. And I might be playing a different song on the record, and then suddenly accidentally bumps the table, and what happens is the needle goes, and it lands right in that deep groove. And then maybe the groove is so deep that it gets to the end of the song, and it just sort of skips back into the song, right? So that's all great if it's your favorite song, but what if it's the trauma groove? What if it's the fear song? And that's the groove that's really deep, because what fires together wires together. That's the wiring. That's trauma in a way. It kind of wears a groove in the brain, super simplistic terms. Then I can be just fine. I'm doing okay, and then my classmate bumps me, and suddenly, like I'm in the fear response. For us, somehow, when we talk about stress and trauma and how it affects all of us, that seems to get people really excited because they can really relate. You say, yeah, I've had that feeling. What can I do about it? So part of it is getting people to understand that it isn't, again, just those traumatized people over there, but it's all of us. We're all kind of in this together. That is the call to action. Our under-resourced communities are disproportionately affected by things like community violence, and that sort of chronic trauma tends to make it hard for kids to feel safe and supported and engaged in school if that doesn't get addressed, not just by sending kids to therapy, but by actually trying to create a more safe, supportive, and engaging school environment. Cultural humility and responsiveness is another one of our principles that has been central to the work here, because what we understand is that things like racism, sexism, homophobia actually can be experienced as traumas in and of themselves. And if we ignore that idea, we miss the boat around trying to address trauma. Because, for example, when we think about trauma, sometimes we think about things like family violence, community violence. But when you add on top of that, if you're a person of color, or you are LGBTQ, or you walk around in a place where you have that looming threat that somehow this other person's safety and well-being isn't quite as important. You have this feeling that my safety and well-being is not quite as important as this other person's safety and well-being because of an accident and birth, right? Color of my skin, who I love, how I talk, how I walk. That looming threat that sometimes gets really concretized, and you see that, unfortunately, fairly regularly every day, is another form of potential trauma. It's about understanding that it's not just about those traumatized people over there and then us over here. That stress certainly affects all of us, certainly all of us in the public sector, but I would argue in the private sector too, chronic stress. And epidemiological research tells us that 89% of us are going to experience some sort of trauma by the time we grow old and die. This is a workforce development idea. This is about adults starting to change their everyday practices as professionals and as caregivers to try to create more safe, supportive, engaging learning environment. How do you recognize when, like, oh my gosh, as a teacher, even though I might not have experienced my own trauma, working with trauma-impacted people actually has an effect on me. So to be able to name that, and teachers go, oh my gosh, that's what's been happening to me, right? And then to be able to say, and there's something you can do about it. We can help you with that. And there's many things that you can do just in your daily practice that can make it better. That gets people really excited. Even after just 1 year of implementing this in this school, we saw a 32% decrease in total incidents where you gotta go to the principal's office, you're in trouble, and a 43% decrease. Did I say that right? I'm gonna start over. We saw a 32% decrease in disciplinary referrals to the office. We saw a 43% decrease in physically aggressive incidents that students were engaging in. That was just after 1 year. And after 5 years, there was an 87% total decrease in disciplinary referrals to the office, and an 86% decrease in violent incidents, physical aggression incidents, We saw a big decrease in out-of-school suspensions after 5 years. They saw a 95% decrease in out-of-school suspensions just from doing this work. Now, I'm not going to say that was all about us. They also implemented other things like restorative practices, PBIS. But this lens got people excited about doing those things. It's almost like it's the why. Why would you bother creating a school community? You know, why would you bother putting the time into creating a safe, supportive school community? Why do you bother doing restorative practices? Well, because when you put a trauma-informed lens on it, what it does is it means that those practices work not only for the kids it always works for, but the kids that we otherwise maybe lose because they get pushed out of school. For the teachers that we otherwise maybe lose because they're so stressed out. So that gives me a lot of hope. So the learning is dovetail on what's out there, make sure that everybody knows what kind of stake they have in it, and then talk about not only big picture like system change stuff, but also small everyday things that people can do to change their practice, their everyday interactions with people. When you have that reframe instead of what's wrong with you, what has happened to you, that tends to bring a different feeling to us, like, oh, something's going on, how can I help, versus like, man, this person's crazy, you know, get them away from me, right? And even that reframe has really helped. There's a lot of hope around this.